I'll start with the pawn to e4. My opponent is rated 1293, just on the verge of 1300. He plays the pawn to e5. I play knight to f3, that's standard. I develop the knight to attack the central pawn, and he develops his to defend. So far, everything is normal. Now this is a crossroads. Here you can play either d4, the Scotch opening, or bishop to c4, the Italian opening, or bishop to b5, the Spanish opening. b5, the Spanish opening. You can also play knight to c3, which can lead to the four knights game. Here I'm going to play bishop to c4 with this bishop that not only attacks the pawn on f7, a vulnerable pawn, but it also allows me to lock down the d5 square. My opponent does the same. Why is it important to lock down the d5 square? Because it's a central square. And if he manages to play d5, he'll free up his game. So here, he can't do that. After bishop to c5, the usual move is to play pawn to c3. That's what I'm going to do to prepare the d4 push and go conquer the center. And as you can see, I play d4. If there's a capture, of course, we recapture with the pawn. And the pawn is well protected by the presence of the knight and the queen. Bishop to b4, check. There are several ways to block this check. Knight to c3, maybe bishop to d2. Knight to d2 is also possible, but I'm going to play knight to c3. Because if there's a capture, recapturing with the pawn toward the center will allow me to strengthen the center. My opponent plays bishop to g4. He's pinning the knight on f3. If the knight on f3 moves, I lose my queen, unless it moves with check. That's why I'm also interested in the bishop. Take on f7 with check, because when the king captures, I could then move my knight with check, and then attack his bishop. The problem is that after knight to e5 check, he could capture here with the pawn or the knight, and after knight to g5 check, he could also capture me with the queen. Because if I recaptured the bishop to take his queen, I would also lose mine. And since I started sacrificing on f7, the successive exchanges would make me lose a piece. So I'll look for something else. In this position, what is he threatening? Maybe to take the knight. Recapturing with the pawn would ruin my pawn structure, and recapturing with the queen would make me lose my d4 pawn. Although then there would be the capture on f7 with mate. So in reality, I'm not afraid of bishop takes knight. Queen takes, and there's the attack on f7. So he's going to play knight f6, certainly to block. But I'm not immediately worried about the knight being taken. That's why I'm simply going to develop with kingside castling. I've got the pawn center, castling done, both knights out, and he plays queen f6. He's being aggressive here. So there's this pressure on d4 and this pressure on ef3. How am I going to block all these threats? So when the queen comes out, there's a problem. It's the weakening of the c7 pawn, which the queen no longer protects. And so I'm looking to play knight d5, which will force the queen to retreat. Defend the pawn on c7, because capturing on c7 would allow a fork and win the rook. Plus, with knight to d5, I'm attacking the bishop. So my knight here is really shining. On the central square, it's attacking everything. There, the queen goes back to d8. And now I'm interested in taking his bishop. He'll take with the knight, then queen a4 check. He'll be forced to bring his knight back. And the push to d5 will allow me to win his knight, which will be pinned. So he's going to lose a piece in this sequence. All right, I'll take. There are other ways to take advantage of this unprotected knight. One would be to play a move like queen b3, for example. I'm attacking the f7 pawn and I'm attacking the knight. I could also play bishop takes f7, check, king takes, and queen to b3. Check, still with the intention of winning the knight. But queen a4 allows me to win the piece quite easily. So I'm going to play it. So he brings his knight back to c6 and now the d5 push. And here, I don't see how he's going to save his piece. So of course he can try to take on f3 to damage the defensive walls of Montroc, but here he loses too much with this capture on c6. Because afterwards I threaten to take on pawn 7, opening the diagonal for my queen. So in this opening he played rather correctly, developed his pieces, created threats, but at some point he got too ambitious by bringing out his queen to create threats. But the problem when you bring out your queen is that she can get harassed. And the arrival of my knight on d5 completely turned the situation around. So he plays the pawn to a6. He's going to try to play b5, the fork. So if I take his knight, the b5 push is interesting for him. He'll win back the piece, maybe not in the best conditions, because I could play bishop to f7 check, then save my queen. But it's well played nonetheless. A 6. He doesn't want to lose the piece for nothing. All right, I'll take his knight. So here, the b5 push, well found. He found a solution to avoid losing the piece. But he'll still be in a tough situation. After that, you have to take this check. I'm going to draw out his king, then save my queen. Anyway, when you have a bishop directly targeting the f-pawn, you should always consider sacrifices on that square. It's not always good, but sometimes it makes the difference. So, the king came to f7. Now my queen is under attack. Maybe just play. Queen to b3, check. If he brings back his bishop, we could look at knight to g5. Check. Protected by my bishop, I'm attacking his king and his bishop. Even if he can sacrifice his queen to try to win mine afterwards, why not? We'll see. Anyway, after bishop to e6, I'm not forced to play knight to g5. I can also move my queen. He plays bishop to e6, so now let's look at the consequences of knight to g5. If he moves his king, I take his bishop, and I've won a piece. So after knight to g5, he'll have to take with the queen. He takes my knight. After which I can take back, he takes my queen and I recapture, and in the end we'll have the same number of pieces. In this position, I find that his king is exposed, so I don't really want to exchange queens. So I'm going to play queen to c3. So you can see I don't have much time left, but it's a 5-minute game with a 3-second increment. I'm playing with this time control, so with every move played we get a 3-second bonus. My opponent, just like me. So here, my opponent is offering a queen exchange. I'm going to decline. I play a5. If he takes, I can recapture with the knight and give check. For now, I'm trying to keep the queens on the board because his king is less well protected than mine. So he takes on e5, knight takes on e5, check. I have a dark squared bishop, he doesn't, so I also need to play on the dark squares. If I manage to activate my dark squared bishop, he'll have a hard time blocking it. So, he plays king to a7, and now I'm looking to play b3, so I can play bishop to a 3 check afterwards. I'm also considering bishop to g5. His queen would take, but if my bishop were protected, his queen would be lost. So I could look for attacking moves, but right now I don't have the time. So I play b3. The idea is to play bishop to a 3 check very quickly. Why not bishop to b2 as well? That's a possibility. All right, bishop to a 3 check. His king is going to run out of squares. Next, I'm interested in putting a rook on a1, facing his king, because I think he's going to go to e8. No, he puts the rook on d6. His rook is pinned. I'm going to play rook to e1. I'm not in a hurry to take it, since in any case, it can't move. And if I take it too early, the pawn will recapture, attacking my knight. And if my knight moves, I lose my queen. So it's better for me to take his rook once my queen is no longer directly facing his without protection. So I'm going to protect my queen. There were certainly better moves, but here the idea is to give my knight more freedom of movement. And this rook, in any case, is lost. So I'm going to take his rook. I didn't have to do it right away again, but now, since I don't have much time left, I'm looking to simplify the position. You see, I'm trying to exchange queens. Earlier, I wasn't trying to exchange queens because his king was very weak. You might say his king is still very weak. Yes, but in the meantime, I've won the exchange. That is, I still have 2 rooks, and he only has 1. And that's an advantage in endgames. I have an extra pawn and an extra exchange. So the queen exchange is in my favor. And if he refuses to exchange queens, I'll still be in a favorable position because his king is more exposed than mine. The only unpleasant thing for me in this position is the lack of time. That's why I have to play rather quickly, and sometimes I won't play the best move. So here, I can exchange queens. And now I'm going to propose a rook exchange. You see, methodically, I'm depriving him of all his counterplay opportunities. And now, if I take his rook and he recaptures with the pawn, the c6 pawn becomes a passed pawn that's going to race to become a new queen. So I exchange. That's why he brought his king back, so he could recapture with the king. Knight to d4, still following the strategy of seeking piece exchanges. Normally he's going to avoid this exchange. He'll move away with his bishop, No, he leaves it. So here, I can even play rook to e1 because his bishop is pinned. So now his bishop is lost. He played a bit too quickly. Here, seeing that I had little time left, he was playing very fast to try to flag me as much. But here, that wasn't a good idea. So if he comes to d5 to attack my knight, I can take on f6 and counterattack his. And you can see now that the simplifications are going to pay off. It's pretty easy to win. He plays knight to g4 and attacks my rook. But I'm going to play rook f4, still attacking his knight. He comes to e5, he doesn't want to trade. I'm going to offer him a knight exchange. He might come to d3. To attack my rook? No. And here, he leaves me the knight. So now, you can see he's completely lost his composure and he resigns. New game. Now I'm playing against a player rated 1284. He opens with the d4 pawn. I'm going to play e5, symmetry. For now, nothing crazy. He plays knight f3, I play knight f6. The position isn't unbalanced yet. He plays bishop f4, and now I'm going to create an imbalance. I'm going to play c5. Try to lure his pawn away from the center. I could then recapture that pawn pretty easily. You can get it back with moves like queen to a5 check, or by advancing the pawn so the bishop can take it. But he refused. He plays the c3 pawn. And now, it's awkward for me, because if he takes on c5, it'll be harder for me to get the pawn back. Because the c3 pawn will allow him to solidify his structure with the b4 push. So here, I'm going to take on d4. And now I'm going to play knight to c6. And in the end, the pawn structure is identical. The difference is that, for now, he's a bit better developed, he has the initiative, he still has one extra move, and he plays the pawn to e3. He brought out his bishop before playing e3. So I should try to develop mine before playing the pawn to e6. However, as soon as I bring up my bishop, he'll play moves like queen to b3 to attack the pawn on b7. And it's not easy to defend it, especially rook to b8. That doesn't work because the bishop could take. And if I play the pawn to b6, you see, if I've already developed my bishop, on the other side of the board, advancing pawns on dark squares will weaken. My squares and my diagonals on the light squares, and he could start to counterattack with moves like bishop to b5, followed by knight to e5. If his queen is on b3, maybe queen to a4, and I'll have problems protecting the knight. That's why I'm in a tough spot here. I probably won't develop my bishop, and I'll play the pawn to a6. I'll accept having a slightly passive piece, but I think the counterattacks on my light squares, if I develop my bishop, and especially if I play e6 afterwards and can't bring it back, will be even more harmful. So I'll play e6. After all, I'm playing black, and often with black pieces, you have to make small concessions. He plays the pawn to a3, so I'll play my bishop. To d6, I'm developing. Now, you might say I'm offering a trade. Yes, that's true. But after all, his bishop was well placed and mine wasn't so much. In fact, he doesn't even want to trade. You see, he retreats to g3 and I'm going to exchange. The problem in my position is my bishop. So I'm going to play bishop to d7. And maybe when my knight moves, I'll have a chance to get it out. For example, with moves like queen to b6 and bishop to b5. But now he plays bishop to b5 himself. That means if I move the knight, there will be the possibility of exchanging bishops. That interests me. If you think that queen to a5 check wins the piece, well, that won't work because he can play knight to c3, covering the check and protecting his piece. I think I'm going to play for him knight to d5, offering the exchange of bishops. If he takes with check, I can recapture with the queen, possibly. Now, the problem with a5 is more about the bishop. Takes, check, queen takes, and then knight to e5 comes to attack the queen. So possibly knight to b8. And if bishop takes, I recapture with the knight. All right, knight to b8. It's an underdevelopment move. It's a move that underdevelops, but I'm offering the exchange of my bad bishop for his good bishop. I consider it bad because the pawn on e6 is fixed on a white square, so it restricts its mobility. And he accepts this exchange. He should have refused. He should have gone back to d3, you see. So I recapture with the knight. And now the pawn structure is almost symmetrical, except that he has the semi-open h-file. But for now, the h7 pawn is well defended. Queen to a4 is played. All right, I'll castle kingside. I have no problem with the h7 pawn. His rook is aiming, but the knight and the king are defending. I could sometimes play the move h6. So, I'm not really worried about attacks on the h6 pawn. He brings his queen back. So now, if I move my knight, you see, he could checkmate me. But there's no reason for me to move the knight. And if I play knight to g5 to increase the pressure on h7, I could play h6 and push his knight back. Then on top of that, I could even play knight to e4. I'll start with rook to c8. It's not a very good idea to put a queen on an open file, because sooner or later it gets destabilized by the rooks. So he puts his queen on d3. And now I also look at the attacks. Queen to a5 check, he could play b4. So that doesn't work for me. Rook to c1 check, that's interesting. If he moves his king, he loses the rook. And he's not going to put the queen there. You see, he's too focused on an aggressive attacking plan without looking, that I can also attack him actually. He's only playing one game, the attacking game. He's not looking at the defensive game. So rook, that's a check. If he puts the queen, I take it. If he moves the king, he loses the rook. That's the problem when you have a fixed idea. He had a fixed idea to attack h7 without worrying about anything else. So I take his rook. When I had my rook on c8 and was attacking his queen, actually, he should have played knight to c3 to shield his queen. Now he plays knight to g5. He's still obsessed with checkmating on h7. That's all he's thinking about. But it's protected. The knight protects, so there's nothing at all. And now I'm going to activate my pieces. Maybe with a b6 to go after the b2 pawn. Plus, now the rook is defending. h7 as well, so there's really no chance he'll checkmate. His knight is pinned. He puts the queen on c2, so here he's protecting the pawn on b2. I can't play rook to c8. Unfortunately, my rook isn't protected. But I can play knight to e4. If he takes, I take back, and if he recaptures with the queen, he'll lose the pawn on b2. k4. If he plays f3, maybe he has some plans. 3 checks, quite simply. There's never any attack. On h7, the rook protects, so knight to e4. He takes, I take back. And so if the queen takes on e4, queen takes b2, check. He plays rook to a2 to defend b2. But I will play a move to defend e4. For example, knight to f6. He plays knight to c3, so he doubles the attacks on e4. But now I can play rook to c8, the pin. So his knight is pinned because if he moves it, he loses the queen. And with a check on top of that. He plays queen to d2. Actually, all this time I could have considered queen ideas. A 6. I don't know why I didn't think of it. But queen to a 6 check is very good. What can he do? He has nothing. He has nothing. Anything he puts on the diagonal, he'll lose. It's even more effective now that he played queen to d2 because he doesn't have the d2 square. But he wanted to get out of the pin on the c file. So I take the knight. He can put the queen, but I'll take the queen. And that's checkmate. New game. I'm playing against a player rated 1309 and he opens with the e4 pawn. And here I'm going to play my favorite defense, the Caro-Kann defense. I play c6 to support the d5 push. If he takes, I'll recapture with the pawn. He plays the advanced variation. That's interesting. In this case, I'm not going to play e6 right away because that would block my bishop's development. I'm going to bring out my bishop to f5. Bringing the bishop out to f5 has the drawback of weakening the defense of the b7 pawn. So you have to be careful when your opponent is able to play queen to b3 to attack the b7 pawn. But here, that's not the case, of course, because there's the pawn on c2. He chooses to develop his knight to f3. I'm going to play the pawn to a6, quite simply. So the pawn structure is closed in the center, and the play shifts to the sides. He plays c4, so I can take on c4, and he'll recapture with the bishop. I can do that. But I don't necessarily want to do it right now, because that would help him develop. After all, what's his threat? Taking on d5, I can recapture. That doesn't seem dangerous to me. Pushing c5, I could play b6. If he reinforces with b4, then a5, and he won't be able to reinforce with a 3. I'll take the pawn on b4, and the pawn exchange will cost him his rook on a 1. So I'm not afraid, neither of the capture nor of the push. I'm going to play knight to e7. It might not be the best move, but I'll see. He plays knight to c3. The problem with this structure is that I'm lacking space on the king side, especially the e7 square, which is a square for 2 pieces, for my bishop and my knight. So I might still want to take on c4 to give my knight the d5 square. but I'll leave it for now anyway. I'm going to play h6. Why? I'm preventing the white pieces from coming to g5, especially his bishop. And I can give my bishop this retreat square, so I can then put my knight on f5. Why not? But now that he's just played bishop to e2, I'm interested in taking on c4, because recapturing will have cost him a tempo, he'll have lost a move. I don't know if it's good, but I'm going to do it. Anyway, in chess, we're full of doubts. And now I play knight to d5. He can take, I recapture, I don't really see any danger for me. Still, I need to be careful. With moves like queen to b3, as I mentioned, attacks on b7. Here my move to d5 is motivated by the desire to put my bishop on e7. Give up this square to finish my development with a kingside castle. So, what could the possible plans for development be? For me, it's not that easy. If the knight isn't there, there could be pressure on d4. But the pawn is well protected. So often, you'll play moves like bishop to g4 first to undermine the protection. Now he plays queen to b3, so he's attacking b7. I can simply play b6. I like b5 less, because after captures on d5, I would have to recapture with the e-pawn, since I need to keep the protection of the b5 pawn. And recapturing with the e-pawn gives my opponent a majority on the king side. You see, he'll have 4 pawns against 3. And since he already has a space advantage in that area, I don't want to give him too many assets. So I'll just be content to push it. b6. My knight doesn't have the c6 square, but it does have d7. For now, it's a positional game. My opponent is playing well, so he just retreated his bishop to e2, and I'm going to castle kingside. I'll continue my development. I don't see any advantage for myself, but I don't see one for him either. It seems like a fairly balanced, tense position. He plays bishop to e3, giving me the chance to take the dark squared bishop. If I take the dark squared bishop, it's to attack on the dark squares. And I have to be careful with the play. On the light squares, however. Why do I have to be careful on the light squares if I take his dark squared bishop? It's because I'll have one less piece to fight on the light squares. So I need to be able to attack on the dark squares without him attacking me on the light squares. So it's not easy. But I'm still considering it because after knight takes, pawn takes, the c5 push interests me. After the capture, the bishop will recapture and be well placed on the diagonal. But after knight takes, pawn takes, the c5 push, he can counter push with the 4 and attack my bishop. My bishop could come to g4, which would put pressure on your position. He could also push d5 after that move is made. I'm not sure if this is the right moment. I can wait a bit and continue developing. I'll play knight to d7. After all, he already has his rooks connected, so I'm developing a bit more. And I'll make the decision to exchange the knight for the bishop a little later. He plays rook to d1. And now it's facing my queen, so that's uncomfortable. On knight takes, pawn takes, c5, he could even try to open up the position and highlight the rook-queen face-off. So I can move aside my queen, maybe to c7. But then he'll move back to c1, even if it means bringing the other rook to d1 afterwards. It's not easy to make a decision here. I still have a lack of space in this position. And you see, taking on c3 only strengthens his center after he recaptures with the pawn. So I don't really want to do that. I'm going to play queen to c7. It doesn't seem very good to me, but I don't have much time. And for now, I haven't found a better idea. He comes to d3, offering to exchange the light-squared bishops. I can accept, or else I can go bishop to g4, attacking his knight, which is pinned. He'll probably have to go back to e2, by the way. But after all, exchanging the light-squared bishops is still interesting. I don't have much time, so I'll take it. The c5 push has the drawback of letting his knight in, b5 as well. I'm going to play queen to b7. The advantage now, since he no longer has a light-squared bishop, is that I can place my queen on a light square, maybe put my rooks on d8 and c8, and look for the c5 push afterwards. You see, when it comes to taking on e3 or pushing c5, I'm trying to make sure they happen under the best possible conditions, because for me, they're not clear in these circumstances. Maybe they're very good, but the lack of time keeps me from properly evaluating the position. He plays knight to e2. Now I play the c5 push. If he takes, I can recapture with the bishop. If he recaptures, I can take back with the knight, attacking the rook and the queen. You see, this seems to happen under better conditions to me. I have to be careful since my queen is not protected. I can never recapture with the b-pawn, otherwise I lose the queen. He goes to g3. I'm going to put a rook on c8 to prepare the c4 push. He might put a rook on c1, and I could put my queen on a 6, still to support this c4 push. For now, I'm not afraid of him taking, so he plays queen to d1. And I'm going to play the c4 push. I'm establishing a pawn majority on the queen side. I have 3 pawns against 2 on the queen side, while his center for now is blocked. I just need to be careful that he doesn't manage to sacrifice against my king, because he has a lot of pieces aimed at my king side. And that I make use of my pawn majority on the queen side. The idea is to create a passed pawn, play b4, c3, and this passed pawn will have to be blocked. And by blocking this passed pawn, he'll have to take up a rather passive position. And I'll look to make progress elsewhere. So he plays knight to h5. There, he's going to prepare sacrifices. All of this makes me a bit nervous. So I'll play here. Rook to d8. Why? To free up the f8 square for my bishop or my knight, so I can bring pieces back to defend. You see, he's looking for sacrifices here. I'm going to play bishop to f8 now. Taking the dark squared bishop seems like a good idea, but after recapturing with the pawn, I activate his rook on the file. All right, pawn to b4. I don't have much time left. I need to keep playing. c3 now. All right, c3. If he takes, I can recapture with the pawn or with the rook or the knights. Those are interesting options too. Everything seems interesting to me, but I think I'll recapture with the pawn. So he doesn't take. Come on, play well. I'm playing the pawn to a5. Now I'm going for the a4 breakthrough. I'm playing a 4. I'm well aware that I'm going to lose this pawn. I'm going to put my rooks on the file to win it back. Knight to b6, rook to a8, things like that. All right, rook to a8, maybe with knight to b6, knight to c4. I also have the c4 square, which is interesting now. My knight on d7 was struggling to get active, but now it's going to find some squares. But it's very dangerous for my king, because I see that the knight, the bishop, and the queen are all aiming toward my castling. Knight to f3 could come. It seems very dangerous to me. Here, I'm betting on the fact that he doesn't dare to sacrifice just yet, and that he only makes defensive moves. Queen to c6, I'm attacking the a4 pawn. The b4 pawn is well protected by the knight and the bishop. And queen takes a 4, that's what I want to do. I'm not against exchanging queens because the c3 pawn, the passed c3 pawn, is very strong. And then there would be no more attacking threats against my king if I exchange queens. So queen takes a 4. And if he refuses to exchange queens, there's the a2 pawn that's under attack, ma'am. He positions himself well, but I think he has to play. Queen to c1 anyway. The rook is defending. At 2, the queen will avoid the queen exchange and put pressure on the a6 pawn. Fortunately, I have my bishop on f8, which is holding. After queen to c1, I might play queen to a3, always offering him this queen exchange. Very interesting game. A very good player. So he comes here to d3. Interesting. All right, queen to a6. I don't have much time left. I'm trying to nibble away at his time, second by second. I'm trying to pick his pocket to take away those few seconds from him. He comes here now, but he left the rook. That's it, he cracked. By refusing the queen exchange, he cracked here. And now I'm even attacking the knight. It's going to be like a 3-cushion billiards game. I'm going to take all his pieces. The pawn on a 2 is still under attack. He plays knight to f3. I'm going to take it. They're crazy, just like that. At least it won't be able to sacrifice itself. And the idea, after recapturing the pawn, is what I'm going to do. Rook takes a 2 and now look for mate on g2. His knight can't join the attack. Maybe here he can move the knight so the queen can defend or find another move, I don't know. But now it's starting to get very complicated for him. Another new source of trouble for him is that now he no longer has the time advantage. His time is becoming critical. He plays queen to g4. So what is he threatening here? I don't really see what he's threatening. I can take on e3, give check. But look, if I take on g2, I know I'm going to lose a piece. I know very well that I'm going to lose a piece, but the endgame is winning for me. The c-pawn will attack his rook, it will come to c1, and I play the b-pawn to b3. So here I've simplified the position by exchanging queens, because two connected passed pawns just 2 squares from promotion are stronger than a rook. The rook can't stop two connected passed pawns that are just 2 squares from promotion. And there you go. I'm going to manage to make a queen. Ah, I didn't see that he had played knight here in the meantime. What a mistake on my part. All right, I'll play rook to b8 right away. I was being clever. He who acts clever falls into the ravine. I play g6, I attack his knight, I'm looking for exchanges. He doesn't want to. I don't have much time left, unfortunately. Ah, man, I was being clever, and it's going to backfire on me. Four pawns against 4, this endgame of 2 knights versus 2 bishops. I'm attacking the 2 pawns, he comes to defend. I'm going to come to b6 to attack again. If I play d5, he'll lose the pawn on e5. He comes here to control the b6 square. I go to c7. I've lost my bishop. This position is terrible. I'm playing terribly. He didn't see it, fortunately. Come on, I'll take here. I'm also attacking his knight. If he takes my bishop, I take his knight. Here, it's the lack of time that's making us make big mistakes. It's terrible. He can play d6. But fortunately, my king can come back. And I also have bishop f6. Come on, I'll take. I'm going to take on h2. And now I need to bring my king back. The only danger for me is the pawn. We block. There, that was a close call for me. f5. His passed pawn is blocked, and I'm going to win with my 3 pawns. And he resigns now. Nice game. We can really congratulate my opponent, because for a 1309 rated player to play such a game, it's impressive. I suggest we end on this beautiful game. My opponent really impressed me, and it shows that 1300 ELO players can be very dangerous, and you shouldn't get cocky against them. I got cocky, and I almost paid the price. A very, very high price. You can leave me comments, likes, and share the video, and we'll meet again soon for new adventures on the chessboard. Goodbye, everyone.